How do you start a podcast? That is a question that I asked myself about 10 years ago, and I've been podcasting ever since. So, obviously, if you want to start your own podcast, I'm hoping you've already got a topic that you'd like to start podcasting on. If you don't have a topic, then I suggest you stop this video, bookmark it, go away, think about what you'd like to do a podcast on, come back, and then carry on. Because obviously, the main important thing of any podcast is the subject that you're podcasting about. So I'm going to presume that you've already got a topic. You're not quite sure how to navigate the pitfalls and the little things that you need to do in order to get that podcast online and into people's ears and onto their phones. So I'm going to sort of blow apart some of the myths of podcasting. I've listened to a lot of podcasts over the years. I still listen to a lot of podcasts. I have maybe 15, 20 on rotation in my iPod. Yes, I still use an iPod. Apple don't even sell iPods anymore, so go figure. Everybody listens to podcasts on their phones and their smart TVs and their iPads and whatnot. But I still use my trusty old iPod. So whenever you hear me mention that, yes, I'm old. So I have about 20 shows on rotation. They all drop episodes at various times of the week, sometimes several times a week, sometimes once every couple of months. So that is a subject that I will get onto. But anyway, so podcasting. What do I need? Well, obviously, you've got your idea. You know what you're going to podcast about. So for me, most of the podcasts, in fact, 90% of the podcasts I do are about movies. They're about the films I watch. They're about the films that I'm looking forward to watching. They are conversations with filmmakers and such forth. So I'm very much media based. So for you, you might want to do a travel podcast. You might want to do one about plastic toys or kittens or whatever, snails, which is the fastest snail in the world. I don't know, and to be honest, I don't care. I'm here to help you start a podcast from scratch, just like I did way back when in the dark ages when people were still saying, "What's a podcast?" Yes, they did ask that quite a lot. So what do you need? What do you need in order to podcast? Well, this one, for ease, for me, is being done on my phone. So you could, in a sense, use your mobile phone to do a podcast. That is one option. You could also use your tablet. So I have my iPad, which you can use. If you are, however, using a PC or a laptop or a Mac or something, you're going to need one of these. USB headset, I would recommend. I see a lot of podcasters with the big funky mics and then sort of lean over and they talk into the mic and they've got the what do you call it? The thing, the shield in front of it. I've never really gone into that because I'm always worried about when I'm podcasting. For example, with one of these, if I am untangling it and I put it on and I want to turn that way while I'm looking at my notes or something, Pegasus flies past the window, I'm fine because my microphone is here. If I want to look that way, I'm fine. It's not a problem. If I've got a microphone in front of me and I'm looking wherever for show notes or such like, you may end up seeing a little bit of differentiation in the noise. So I prefer the USB setup. They're also very cheap and they'll last a hell of a long time. I've probably in the past 10 years had 3 headsets, and a couple of those times it's just because I've had one for a few years and I want to buy a new headset. You can pick them up for maybe 20, 25 pounds, $25. Probably get them even cheaper than that, to be honest. I did recently pick one up with one earpiece and the mic, but it sort of threw the noise balance off. I wasn't a real fan, so I've gone back to the one with 2 because it blocks everything else out and allows me to concentrate on the person I'm speaking to and nothing else. So I would recommend the headset. This will last you easily 6, 7, 8 years. Pretty cheap. That is all the equipment that you need. $30 headset or £30 headset is all you need, other than obviously your mobile phone or your PC or laptop or your tablet. But I'm presuming if you're watching this on YouTube, you've already got one of those things, so you're all set. So you just need the headset. Now, software-wise, what do you need software-wise? This has got more than one answer, and it depends which route you go down. Are you going to do a video podcast like this episode is now, or are you just going to do audio? I'll start off on the video. So software-wise, if you're doing a solo podcast like this episode is, your mobile phone takes care of the recording for you. It'll record it into my gallery. I can then upload it to YouTube or copy it over to my PC and do a little bit of editing, but we'll get onto the editing stuff later on. But if you're just going to talk at the camera, upload it straight to YouTube, like with a TikTok video, you've got all the software that you need. If you're doing it from a PC, you will obviously not use your mobile phone to record it. I would recommend, if you're doing it with a co-host or a guest, you're probably going to use Skype, Teams, or Zoom. All those pieces of software will record it for you if you click the little record button. No extra cost for the Skype. Teams I'm not sure about, and Zoom I know has weird limitations and subscription things, but I tend to use Skype because it's free. It also doesn't cut you off after half an hour or 40 minutes. You can have as many people on as you want. I had 7 guests on at one point. I wouldn't recommend having 7 guests on every single podcast. If you go down the guest and co-host route, it gets quite messy with people talking over each other, and then you have to tell people to shut up and stuff like that. So if you're doing video, Skype will record the video for you. If you're doing audio, then obviously don't click the video button when you're doing your Skype call. Skype will still record the audio, and it'll put it on your hard drive or wherever your files folder. And then you will edit that later on, but I will cover editing a little bit. So we've got equipment, you need your headset. Pay whatever you want for that. That's pretty much the only outgoing that you'll have. For recording your podcast, Skype will take care of it. Teams will, Zoom will. So you've got that, that's video and audio. So you've had your conversation with your guest, yourself, your co-hosts, whoever. You've got an MP3 or a WAV file on your device. That is your podcast. Now you're probably going to want to add theme music to that. Then that is something you will create yourself. You could either sample something or have somebody create. If you want something like Fiverr or whatever and go, hey, somebody make me like a 10-second theme song or something like that, then you should be able to do your theme song. Same with your outro, maybe a little bit of a musical thing to go, right, that's the end. That's the end, guys. Go home. See you whenever the next episode drops. So you've got your MP3. Then you're going to have to edit it. This is where another piece of software comes in. This is called Audacity. That one. So when Audacity, that's what Audacity looks like when you are about to edit a podcast file. There we go. Right, let that back in. So what you do with Audacity, which is you go online and type Audacity download, and you will find the free download for that. It is not a piece of software that costs money. It is not a piece of software that has limitations. It is a piece of software that I've been using on and off for like 10 years. Never had a problem with it. It'll probably take you maybe an hour or so to get used to if you're not familiar with audio editing. I remember the first half hour, I'm like, this looks so complicated. Now I can have a show online within 15 minutes of finishing recording. I will bring in the picture again of what a file looks like when it's on the Audacity timeline. So you will drop that in, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can remove bits, so you can trim gaps at the beginning. You can even remove people's sneezes if they happen to sneeze. And I'm back. It's pretty easy to get used to that software. Once you've finished playing around with it, adding your theme songs, removing sneezes or whatever you wish to do, you will then export it as a WAV file. This is important. So export it as a WAV file to your desktop. Call it a new file name. Don't call it the same as the previous one, just in case something goes wrong when you're exporting it or you're editing it. Not that it ever does, but for the sake of the file size, it's always handy being able to go back one step if you press the wrong button and you do something silly. So you export it as a WAV file. Why are you exporting it as a WAV file? Well, if you've had a conversation with another person, generally the sound levels are all the same. However, if you've then gone into Audacity and you've added a theme song or you've added an outro song, the noise levels from that music track may be different to the voice track. You don't want to be deafening your audience or making them turn things up and turn things down throughout the duration of your podcast. So you will then need a little piece of software called Levelator. Okay, so Levelator is a free bit of software again. I've tried to go down the free route because, I'll get onto why in a few moments. Levelator is something that you drag, you open the program up, you drag your WAV file, your finished one, onto that box, and then you'll then see it doing the waveform, and it'll give you a percentage thing. What that is doing is leveling the sound out for you, making sure that everything is of the same level, so you don't deafen your poor audience. That'll take anywhere between 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes up to 15 minutes. It depends how long your episode is. If you're leveling a 5-minute episode, be done pretty quick. If you're doing an hour and a half one, like I often do, then it'll take a little bit longer. Once it's done, it'll obviously say complete. And what it'll have done is it will have exported a new file out for you. So it'll be called new podcast .output.wav. So you'll see the word output on it. You then drag that back into Audacity, which obviously you've probably still got open, and you can then export that as an MP3. So it's very important to export it as an MP3, because that is the file that you're then going to put online that is then going to feed out to all the different podcasting outlets. Now, where do you put the file? That is the question. And there are lots and lots of different answers to that. What you're looking for is a hosting site. Now, I've been using the same hosting site for a decade. It's a free hosting site. They're not paying me to do this. Wish they would. It's a free site, so I'm fine with it. And that's talkshoe.com. Now, with TalkShoe, you create an account. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't put any payment details in. You then make your show. So say you want to call it My Podcast. You will create your show. You will upload your thumbnail artwork, which I think is 1500 by 1500. If I remember it, we'll tell you once you upload. You'll type a little description of your new show. So, hey, this is my new podcast. It's going to be about fish, or fish that swim, or it's going to be obviously most fish swim other than dead fish. You type a description in, and then you select your MP3 file from your desktop, click upload, boink, up it goes to TalkShoe. Then when you first create an account with TalkShoe, and once your file's up, there is then some settings in there which will guide you through. It's a very, very easy website. It will then allow you to add it to different podcasting hosts, no cost in any of them. It will say, do you want to submit this to Amazon Music, Spotify, if this was a couple of weeks ago, Google Podcasts, but apparently Google Podcasts is gone, and obviously Apple Music and iHeartRadio, and it will give you all the options. And if you go yes, then it will talk you through submitting it to those. I would recommend submitting it to all of them, because obviously the more places that your podcast goes, the more chance people have got of stumbling across your podcast and listening to it. So TalkShoe, free. Headset, not free. Audacity software, free. Levelator, free. Skype, free. So far, we are not spending a lot of money. So when you listen to a lot of podcasts that talk about all the costs of these shows come out of our pocket, there really isn't that much cost. I've spent more money on maintaining my website from pagescreen.com than I have maintaining my podcast. I just sort of snoop around, find out these free sites. I haven't had to change my hosting site since day one. And I started my show in like 2011, so it's over a decade. TalkShoe, as far as I know, aren't in danger of going anywhere. What I would recommend is you make an archive folder somewhere on an external hard drive, or your PC somewhere and save your finished MP3s in an archive, just in case you ever need to back them up or send them off to a different website. So some of the other questions that I've seen answered or talked about in these sort of videos: consistency. Some videos say you've got to be consistent. I'm going to take a little drink of tea next on Thursday. Nice. You've got to be consistent with your episodes. No, you don't have to be consistent. There are some podcasts that I listen to that record daily. So every day, an episode of a various length will drop into my iPod. Yes, I'm old. And I'll listen to the podcast when I choose. Other podcasts I listen to drop a weekly episode. Other podcasts I listen to drop a monthly episode. I'm actually the co-host of one called Stage 16, which does one episode every month. The show I create, From Page to Screen Movie Podcast, generally uploads one episode per week. But there are some that are daily, weekly, monthly. There are some shows that will drop a show every 3 to 4 months. Not consistently. It'll just be like a nice surprise. I mean, when people give us gifts, other than Christmas and birthdays and stuff, somebody just goes, I've just got you a present. We didn't need to know that was going to happen. Sometimes it's just nice for a surprise. You don't necessarily have to be consistent with your podcast. Just upload when you feel like it. One of the main things that you've got to remember about podcasting is you've got to enjoy doing it. If you're not enjoying doing it, you're not enjoying the topic, or you don't feel like recording, don't. It will come across to your audience that you really don't want to be there, and they will feed off that and they'll just leave. So just enjoy it. If you stop enjoying doing a podcast, stop podcasting. That was one very good bit of advice I was given many, many years ago. Another question: how long should an episode be? What's the episode length? That's a bit like saying, well, how long should a film be? The correct answer is your episode should be as long as the stories you need to tell. And also, I think it comes down to consistency. If I'm listening to a podcast and they're dropping a daily episode, and those episodes are 3 to 4 hours long, I am not going to be able to spend 3 or 4 hours every day listening to that podcast. So some episodes will get skipped. If, however, it's a daily podcast and each episode is maybe 20 minutes, I'm okay with that. I will be fine. If it's a weekly podcast or a monthly podcast, I don't mind if it's 3-4 hours, because I've got that set time to catch up with your content. So there is no set episode length that is perfect. If you're doing YouTube ones, apparently the ideal length is between 5 and 15 to 20 minutes, which is something I'm running experiments on with regards to video podcasting. I've primarily done audio podcasting for 10 years, and it's only within the past 12 months that I'm dipping my toes into video podcasting. So that's kind of a new thing for me that I'm still learning. But there are some shows that I do watch on YouTube for like an hour at a time, but not many. There are more audio shows of longer length than I listen to than I will watch. I'm going to be watching movies on my TV for an hour and a half. I'm not necessarily going to be watching your podcast for an hour and a half on my television. So yeah, an episode can be as long or as short as you choose. Video or audio, which do you want to do? Both would be my answer now. I think I record my podcasts on video, but I turn them into audio. So I end up with both. If the YouTube thing goes crazy and like, hey, we want more video podcasts, then it's been a win. But I don't want the audio podcast to suffer. So that's a thing that I would probably recommend that you ponder. With audio, it's easier. You can just sit there with your headset on. You can look at show notes. You could have your notes written down if you're speaking to a guest. You can go, so tell me, so this film that you were in 1986, you can't really do that when you're on video. You're going to let me have a look at this. So there are extra things that do come into play if you start doing video podcasting. Are you going to do a solo show like this? Or are you going to have co-hosts? Finding a co-host can be tricky. I've gone through maybe half a dozen co-hosts in the past 10 years. Sometimes they leave because they just sort of tire of podcasting, or sometimes they just don't work out, and you need to sort of have a conversation with them going, I think you might need to leave because you don't seem to enjoy yourself anymore. Solo ones are trickier, but some people, I listened to the post game report, and JVB went from doing group shows to doing solo shows, and his solo skills are impressive to this day. So if you want a good example of how to do a solo podcast, then check out the post game report and just listen to what JVB says. Are you going to have guests on your podcast? They're always fun. I always enjoy, because I'm a movie fan, so I always enjoy having guests on the podcast. But that's something to think about. Maybe not for your first episode, maybe for your first episode. I think hopefully what you're learning from this video is there are no rules. You don't have to put an episode out every 5 days or every 7 days or every Sunday at 9 o'clock, or not every episode needs to be 43 minutes long, or people will leave, and it doesn't need to cost anything other than the headset. What does it cost? Doesn't cost anything. Other questions, right? Can I make money from my podcast? You could. I mean, it's possible. That's like, can I be a millionaire actor? Some are. Can I be a millionaire podcaster? There's a small number that are. But if you're going into podcasting thinking, oh, this is easy money, I've got news for you. It ain't. I don't make money doing what I'm doing. I'm not Joe Rogan or Kevin Smith or Ricky Gervais or anything, but you've got to get out of it what you want to get out of it. I'm a movie fan, so over the years I have had so many filmmakers on my podcast that give me the time of their day and will chat to me and let me ask them whatever. So I geek the hell out on my movie podcast, so I enjoy that. Can I make money? Well, you could set a Patreon up. Some shows do that, set a Patreon account up, so if somebody throws money at you, they get extra episodes, extra content, behind the scenes, uncut things, ad-free episodes, so you've got all that. My experience, I haven't really found Patreon works for me. I'm not a fan of keeping content behind for just those that give money, because I know that not everybody can afford to throw money at podcasts. Too busy spending it on streaming platforms. So I don't tend to put too much thought into Patreon, but there is the option. There is also tip jars, things like coffee. So buy me a coffee. I do have one of those. I've had moderate success with that. Some people have very kindly thrown in donations to my coffee page. I will actually put the coffee link in the contents at the bottom of this video in the description now. So if anybody wants to throw in $1, £1, some chewing gum or whatever, that would be very, very much appreciated, so you can make a little bit of money that way. You could also get some sponsors if you're the sort that wants to get people to sponsor. Let's just say, for example, so this episode is brought to you by the Pepsi Cherry Max, blah blah blah. Technically that is a sponsor, so you could possibly make a little bit of money that way, but realistically you're not going to become a millionaire by podcasting. So why podcast? One, kind of therapeutic. I mean, if you're doing a podcast about what you've been up to this week, what you've watched, what video games you've played, and what your day was like at work, and what the weather's like outside, then it's therapeutic. It's sort of social without having to just leave your house and go speak to stuff. So it's the therapeutic part I like. It's got to be enjoyable. If it's not, what is the point unless you're making a fortune? I don't like musicals, but if somebody wants to pay me a stupid amount of money to do a podcast about musicals, sign me up. I will start podcasting about how amazing musicals are in the next 24 hours. So it's got to be enjoyable. Pick a topic you like. Pick a topic that has like an inexhaustible supply of content. So movies, life, books, wrestling, whatever your topic is, whatever floats your boat, If you can talk to people about it for a reasonable amount of time on a weekly, monthly, whatever basis, then and you enjoy it, hell yeah, go for it. The third reason why podcast is a bit of a legacy, and this is something I've pinched from one of the pioneers of podcasting, an absolute gent of a man, Anthony Alex, who hosted the Angry Mailman podcast, which ran for many, many years and just hasn't recorded for quite a while. I do like to think it'll come back. I don't know. Anthony Alex is busy living life. I asked him at one point why podcast, and he said it's a legacy. So at that dark time in the future when he's no longer with us, or I'm no longer with me or anybody, there will be hundreds of hours of our podcasts telling the stories we want to tell. And this is something that wasn't around 20, 30 years ago. There was maybe some photographs of a relative or a friend. But imagine that one of your friends is no longer around. I'll just touch upon this for a minute, but imagine they're not around now. But you can just go onto a website and download 500 episodes of them talking an hour at a time and listen to their stories. It's kind of nice. It's a nice little legacy. And that was a moment's silence for whoever this imaginary friend was that's no longer with us. There are people that have been on my show that unfortunately are no longer around, and I still hear their voices now and again on an episode if I happen to be replaying one. Pitfalls. Not many pitfalls. I think the one major pitfall is if you become too obsessed with the numbers or how many reviews have I got? Why have I not got any reviews? Let me check how many people have downloaded this week. Why is it less than last week? Why is the number not going through the roof? Why is his podcast or her podcast getting more listens than mine? If you become obsessed with the numbers, you will start to change the podcast that you do. Maybe it's the section on TV that people don't like, so I'll get rid of that section. Actually, it's dropped even more, so I'll put that section back in. But it's, oh no, maybe they don't like when I talk about Marvel because the DC fans don't like, and maybe I won't talk about DC because the Marvel fans, and just don't become obsessed with the statistics. Do your show, have the conversations. I always tell people, and I never class conversations with filmmakers as interviews. I don't like the phrase interview because I don't sit there with a whole bunch of questions going, next one is 1945. I have a conversation and I will end up learning stuff throughout that conversation. And I was trying to think where I'm going. So I've kind of got lost with that. They are conversations that you have, and I've just derailed myself by going down. I think one important thing is if you do derail yourself, like I've just done, it was an unplanned derailment, is don't panic about it. Just go, well, I guess I fluff my lines up. I will get back on track. And after a few fluffs, you will become so natural at podcasting. So yeah, just don't become obsessed with the stats. I've now gone back onto where I was originally trying to do, and it was to do with conversations between friends. So I'm talking to you. Imagine you're a guest and we're actually talking face to face. Hi. I just so happen to be recording this conversation. I'm not thinking about what my listeners will think when they hear the conversation. I'm just having a conversation with you. And then once the conversation's over, the conversation is over. And then I will upload the podcast for people to listen. If there's any little glitches in there, like I fluff up, like I call somebody like Lawrence DiCaprio or whatever, I'll go, oh, can't believe I got his name wrong. That sort of thing. You lean into it. Don't panic if you make mistakes when you're talking to somebody or yourself or whatever, because you don't get a chance to go back and edit your own conversation, do you? So what have we learned? That podcasting doesn't need to cost a fortune. All it needs to cost is enough for a headset if you're using a PC or a laptop. The software you need, Audacity and Levelator, are free. If you're going to use Skype to talk to guests, that's free. If you're going to just do solo shows, you can use your mobile phone if you wish, or you can use Audacity. It's very easy. We'll just record your WAV file. Got a hosting site, talkshoe.com, which is free. You don't have to be consistent. Doesn't matter what episode length is. You can do a solo show. You can have guests. You can have co-hosts. You're not going to make a fortune from it, but there are ways to get little treats and stuff out of it. And mainly just enjoy podcasting. It is fun. I wouldn't have been doing it 10 years if I didn't flipping enjoy it. I hope you've learned a little bit from this. And if there are any questions that you've got about podcasting, please drop them in the comments. There may be some people listening to this going, how dare you? You do have to be consistent. The episodes do have to. They don't. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've had some episodes that have been 20 minutes. I've had some episodes that have been 2.5 hours. I've never had a complaint yet. So I am doing all right. So yeah, enjoy podcasting. I hope that somebody has set up their own show. If they have, and you see this, and this was because of this video that you decided I'm going to set my own show up, drop it in the comments. I'll have a listen. And I'm not going to critique, I'm going to judge. I don't expect my podcast to be, win any awards. Although, to be fair, it has done. It's won a few Angry Mailman podcast awards. So I'm not going to judge. I just want to listen to what you talk about. But thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.